Previously, on Night of the Serpent. The Torch Soldier takes the notes from 13, and then is feathered by a goblin arrow. All hell breaks loose. Heck immediately turns on the goblins, and in a round or two manages to dispatch the entire battle stack with radiant blasts. 13, in shock, only manages to grab the notes before they fall into the river. While Gûlwyf kills the wounded Torch Soldier, the second Torch Soldier takes the boat and pushes it out into the river, taking his crossbow and pointing it down at the bottom of the boat, threatening to destroy it if they don't let him live. Of course, Heck is having none of this, and he spins to blast and kill the final soldier. But not before he was able to warn the Watchtower and Camp Vengeance just around the bend. The heroes of Red Bazaar then decide that discretion is the better part of valor, and turn and flee into the jungle at top speed. They are, however, pursued. The Torch Everburning sends a heavy response squad after them, 6 lance-wielding torch thugs mounted on axe beaks and led by a Corporal Kreska, a dragonborn veteran, and in no time at all, the party is run down. What follows is thus far the toughest fight of the campaign. Heck stays airborne, and while partially tangled in the thick canopy, has the highest kill count of the battle, claiming soldier after soldier with his radiant beams. Gûlwyf, meanwhile, tanks like a boss, swallowing something like 12 attacks around and standing for most of the fight. 13, with Eku panicking inside them, scrambles around the edges of the fight, passing out bardic inspiration here or there, and at one point sneak attacking the Corporal. In the end, though, the numbers simply overwhelm Gûlwyf, and she goes down. A fleeing 13 is trampled and beaten into unconsciousness in one round from the Corporal. When the Corporal and one remaining Torch attempt to flee, with the unconscious Gûlwyf bleeding over the saddle, Heck pursues them, killing the Torch Soldier, the Axebeak, and the Corporal's Axebeak before allowing the Dragonborn to retreat. Meanwhile, unconscious 13 is coaxed back to life by Eku, who takes over control of their body and runs to save Gûlwyf. After the battle, Eku and Heck have a confrontation. Using the tabaxi's claws, the koalas scratches the aarakokra across the face. You see, Eku is a pacifist, disgusted every time the party resorts to violence to solve its problems, and in this case, she holds Heck responsible for this particular clusterfuck. Heck, however, and I think Jay to some extent, violently disagrees that he's to blame here, but before they can come to blows, Eku retreats deep into 13's mind and relinquishes control of the tabaxi's body. What follows is several days of the party navigating the forest without a real guide. They inadvertently cross back into goblin territory, but for the most part they remain undetected. 13 does fall into a pit trap at one point, which summons a battle stack, but the characters this time make their stealth checks and avoid getting caught. As the best survivalist in the group, it falls to Gûlwyf to lead the party, though Heck does assist her by flying above the treetops and getting a lay of the land. Overall, though, it doesn't go the best, and they spend a few days walking in circles. One night, Heck is attacked in his sleep by a constrictor snake wrapping around his neck. He's able to slay the creature easily, but in the aftermath, the party marvels at why a creature like this would attack him. There's a lot of tension in the party at this point. Eku and 13 are no longer on speaking terms. The koala retreated deep into the recesses of 13's mind. Day after day, the party suffers their nightmares without Eku's help. Eventually, after they're convinced that they're never going to find Vorn, 13 simply stops. As Heck and 13 reinitiate their old argument about Vorn and its usefulness, Gûlwyf stumbles upon there's perhaps a dozen of the strange creatures moving their way through the jungle on a very particular path, many of them carrying fruits or flowers or what appear to be gifts of some kind. After a failed attempt to communicate with the Vegapygmies, the party follows them to, of all places, Vorn. And that's where we stopped. So how did it go? I feel like this is becoming old hat, but it was some good and some bad. It was definitely a fun fight. There were a lot of stakes. It felt different than the rest of the fights. H at one point described it as an all-hands-on-deck fight, which it certainly was. It sort of drew K, 13's player, out a little bit, because I think that K tends to be a bit more of an instigator, a little bit more impulsive in combat, not usually the most useful. But because of the dire situation, they sort of felt like they had to start attacking people and using their abilities rather than just sort of goofing off. I'm just still not satisfied with my ability to challenge Heck. There's just so many obstacles there beyond even the flight. He's got great saves. He's got 18 AC. He's got great saves. He's got deflect missiles, which defeats the sort of standard way to attack a flying character. I think I'm going to do like a straw poll on Twitter and try to get some ideas of ways to challenge an aarakokra monk, because he is really a thorn in my side at this point. I don't regret letting him play an aarakokra, I just think it's my responsibility to challenge him as a DM. I have all the tools in the multiverse at my disposal. I can find some way to make him feel frightened in a combat. We almost had 2 character deaths. 2 characters came down to 2 successes and 2 failures, which was pretty dramatic. In 13's case, I had this idea that if 13 were to die, I liked the notion that Eku would just continue to animate 13's body and maybe not necessarily tell the rest of the party that they had died for some time. I thought it would be kind of an interesting dichotomy that the players would know that Case was dead, but the characters wouldn't know that 13 was dead. Maybe a little bit too gruesome, but interesting. Gûlwyf, though, was just unconscious and carried away as a prisoner and failing their death saves, and there was a good chance that H was going to have to roll a new character. Just good timing on Eku's part, and thanks to the tabaxi speed, they were able to get there on time to heal the dwarf. The Heck Eku thing got a little too heated, I think. I think that Jay, as a player, felt attacked by me as the dungeon master, and that certainly wasn't my intent. Eku's pacifism is something that I kind of hit on as a lark early on in the game, and then felt like I hadn't acted on and hadn't acted on and hadn't acted on. It felt like throughout the whole combat, Eku was making a point how they didn't want to do this. Now that they were in charge of 13's body, it felt like they needed to do something to resolve that tension, but attacking a player maybe wasn't the smartest move. At the same time, I feel like Jay could have accepted a little bit more responsibility for what happened. I probably needed to make it clearer that this was Eku's judgment and not my judgment, but I think it was Von Romero, one of our patrons, who described, I'm just playing my character as I'm just following orders of D&D, so that's not really an excuse on my part. I'm worried we haven't seen the end of this, though, so stay tuned. That said, I thought that the 13 Eku distance was kind of interesting as a nice counterpoint to how close they've been in the past couple of sessions. I'm sure that will also resolve at some point going forward, but it was a nice change of pace, I think. On the good side, it was fun to see them wandering around a little bit. I'd been kind of looking forward to this section where they were without a guide and just seeing how that would change the structure and pacing of the campaign, because so far it's been pretty linear. Now it's kind of open world. They can sort of go wherever they want and do whatever they want. They don't really have an objective as of yet. They are trying to find their way back to Orlunga, I think, roundabout the way of finding Vorn. The Vegapygmies are just a happy accident, honestly. They were just very near to where Vorn was, and one of my random encounters was a group of Vegapygmies heading towards Vorn to go and, offer gifts and worship. And so, right at the moment when they thought, we're never going to find Vorn, that was the random encounter they happened to get. So it was this very fortuitous timing, especially because 13 and Eku were about to have this kind of unproductive argument again. I was able to have Gûlwyf notice the Vegapygmies and wander off on this side quest. I'm still a little concerned about the Shield Guardian, but there's no avoiding it now. They have the necklace, they have the Shield Guardian, they're going to put the two things together, and I'm going to have to figure out a way to run combats with this Shield Guardian that they're toting around. It could sort of be a fourth party member, but I'm a little concerned that it's more powerful than any fourth party member, so we'll see. So I think overall it was a good session. I think it was right on that border between good and bad. I think that had someone died, it maybe would have actually pushed the session into being better, that the grief that the characters felt afterwards would have maybe papered over some of the awkwardness, but because they almost died, some of that tension didn't really have a place to go. I'm really hoping that next session of just kind of wandering the jungle manages to diffuse some of the tension a little bit. What do you think? How do you think I ran the session? What would you have done differently? Do you have any questions about the way I'm running the campaign or the changes I'm making to Tomb of Annihilation? What was the last major fight that your party got into? Did anybody die? How did you make it out alive? Go ahead and leave me a comment below. I'd love to hear from you. Be sure to subscribe to the channel and tune in next time to find out what happens on Night of the Serpent. Until then, happy adventuring.